Hope you're all doing well and you have been enjoying your festive occasion with proper mind and proper health. So it's good to have you back on the platform. So before I start today's discussion, before I go interaction with you, let me welcome all of you one by one. Good evening. Good evening. Yeah. So today I have decided to take up the rise and growth of 18th century British periodicals, which is a very vital topic, which is a very vital issue uh, for our study, since all of you are admirer of British English literature, and we have to have a comprehensive idea, an overview about the growth and development of British periodicals, especially that the growth that took place during the 18th century of British English literature. Thank you, sir. Good evening. Okay, it's my honor to have you, on the platform. Okay, I will immediately start the session. So we have to wait for other members to join. Okay, since we can have this live session recorded in the archive of YouTube platform, so I have decided to go live on YouTube instead of Google Meet. So I think that will be an immense help for you, those who are not able to join the live session right now. Okay, and definitely it will be posted on the learning management system, yeah, of our institution as well. So let me start with the factors that resulted in the growth and development of 18th century, British periodicals. Okay, but before I start the session, I want to, tell you two things. In this session, we are going to explore not only the factors, not only the, events, or not only the, issues that shaped the growth and makeup of the British periodicals in the 18th century. At the same time, I'm also going to, take up the very history, the very evolution that the British periodicals and magazines had to undergo since 16th, 17th century. Okay, so all these events, all these stages of the development of the British periodicals will definitely show that the magazines, the periodicals that we have now in the 21st century, actually it has a long history. Okay, so this session will definitely show a way, show the stages one by one, the stages that were very instrumental in shaping and giving a color and texture to the modern periodicals and magazines that we nowadays go through. Okay, so let me first talk about the causes or the factors that led to the growth of British periodicals in the 18th century. But before we start, before we start academic discussion, we have to keep in mind few fundamental things. What is it? What happened in India? What happened in India? Before the socio-religious and political reform took place during the colonial period. So this idea about the socio-political and cultural reform that took place in British India is very important to understand the growth and development of 18th century British periodicals. So by combining or by staging these two cultural contexts, by staging these two uh, different national cultures on two tables, we have to we have to analyze, we have to find out the delicate nuances, we have to analyze the delicate differences and the commonalities between the two cultures, between the two national contexts. What are these things actually? See, before the introduction of English education in India, people in India, especially the people belonging to rural areas, they did not have the facility or they did not enjoy any access to education. They did not have any access to British education or the Western education or the English education, so to say. So before the introduction of Western education in India under the Macaulay Minute of 1834, the people of India did not have access to Western education or English education. And well before 1834, well before 19th century, in the 18th century also, people in India did not have access to modern education. Why? Because there were several limitations. So especially the women in India suffered a lot because they were denied access to education. You might have read in Vedic history that in the early Vedic period, there were ladies like Lopamudra, okay, then Opa. So there were several ladies, educated, learned ladies. They were given access to education. So women education was very much there in the early Vedic period. But during the later Vedic period, the very culture of women education had witnessed a sharp decline. So thus, in several stages of history, in several ages, women education and the mass education had to face several challenges, several impediments. Okay, so this was not an exception. This was not an exception to the British education system also, because people, the general people, were all denied the access to education. Now, why? Why people in general were denied access to education? And women, especially, were actually not given the least attention, were not given due care as far as education is concerned. Now, why? Why were people, kept under darkness? Why they were, made ignorant? The only reason is that since England as a country is dominated by the monarchs, it is dominated by kings and queens. So the monarchs, they thought that if people become educated, they would start, rebellion, they would become resilient, they would start protesting against the throne. And so ultimately these emerging mass will come out to dethrone the king and the queen. So they thought it would be wise to keep the people ignorant, to keep the people illiterate. So mass education was totally ignored. Mass education was not given least focus and attention. So in our country also, the Britishers wanted to, rule us. The Britishers wanted to rule us by by making us ignorant. Actually, initially, they did not want to set up schools and educational institutions to teach Western language, to teach English language. Why? Because they knew that if they taught, the Indians the very principles of democracy, the very ideals of liberty, equality, the Indians would become very, very charged and inspired. They would become motivated to, displace the British, to displace the British throne from the country. And that is why the British government deliberately did not introduce. Actually, it was not the British government initially, it was the East India Company. So the British government, British Parliament did not want to introduce English education first in India because they wanted to keep the Indians ignorant. They wanted to keep Indians away from the advantages or the fruits of British education or the English education. Similarly, what happened in England is that the monarchs or the kings, the queens, they kept Britishers away from the light of education. Understand? And that is why people did not, show that much interest in education in the initial stage of, in the initial stage of the growth and development of the periodicals, magazines, newspapers, so on and so forth. So this is the general idea. This is the fundamental idea about the the poor condition, or the poor condition of the British education system. Okay, now why? Why then 18th century suddenly saw the rise and growth of the periodicals? There must be some changes in the overall outlook. There must be some changes in the overall attitude of the people towards education. Yes, the people started to feel interested. They started to show their interest in education. More facilities were given. More facilities were started to be given or offered to the people. So earlier people were kept ignorant. Earlier people were denied access to education. Now, after 17th century, there was a sudden change. There was a flood of interest among the people towards education. Okay, and this interest towards education, this passion for education, ultimately led to the emergence of several study clubs, study groups, discussion groups, debate groups in England. Okay, and the people and women also they started to believe that they could be educated, or that if they want, they can change their own life, they can change their own self through education. So initially, this is the basic difference between 15th 16th century and the 17th 18th. People initially, they did not show any passion for education. They did not show any interest for education, because they were made to believe that education is not their subject. Education is not an area of concern for them. So they have to earn bread and butter. They have to work under the whims and orders of the kings and the queens. And other than these, they have nothing to do in their life. So this is how their outlook, their mentality, their psychology was molded by the monarchical system. But gradually, there was a shift in their attention. There was a shift in the overall outlook. Okay, and several factors are here very instrumental, are very vital in actually in leading people towards education system. Okay, just a minute. Now, so this gradual interest in education ultimately led to the rise of educated middle class. Educated middle class. I will ask you to note down this point. Educated middle class. Now, I will go back to Indian history. You might have read Indian history in class 10. There you will definitely find that the Sipai mutiny of 1857, it was, it was, publicly and widely condemned. It was widely criticized by the educated middle class, Bengali people, educated Bengali, they sharply criticized the Sipai mutiny that took place in 1857 in the month of March. It started in the month of March 1857. So who are these educated middle class? So if you come to understand the educated middle class Bengali, you will definitely come to understand the educated middle class of the 18th century England. Understand? So let me clarify who the educated middle class Bengali are in Indian history. Can anybody please tell me who the educated middle class Bengali are? Who are called the educated middle class Bengali during the colonial period of colonial period of Indian history. Now tell me who are called the British actually educated middle class Bengali, and then I will jump on to explain the educated middle class of the 18th century England. Tell me. Anybody please tell me. Okay. Yes. Actually, educated middle class Bengali are those who became educated, who became educated with the English. Yes, with the English. See, before 1834, English was not, looked upon. English was not considered to be the medium of instruction. It is the Maclean Minute of 1834 which introduced English as the medium of instruction in British India. And the Bengali people who became educated, with English, who actually first tasted the fruits of English education in India, they are called educated middle class. And it's especially, the Bengalis or the Bengal presidency first actually enjoyed the very the taste of English as a language, English as a medium of instruction. And that is why the educated Bengali are called the, educated middle class Bengalis. Okay. And they became the flag bearers. They became the flag bearers in many contexts. They became the flag bearers of, yes, good evening, Shomi. They became the flag bearers of the British education system. And you know the very Bengali term, Chuiye Pora, the infiltration theory, because this English education will go down to the common people, will go down to the masses. Through whom? Through the educated middle class. So on top of the strata there is English education, and below the English education system there is middle class or the educated Bengalis who are English educated, and through the English educated people, English as a medium of instruction will go down to the level of the masses. This is called infiltration theory, in Bengali Chuiye Pora Niti. Good evening, Rinki. Good evening. So in England also, the people who remained ignorant so far, who were kept totally away from education, who were denied every access to education, suddenly started to enjoy, started to taste the advantage, the fruit of education. And that is why there was a huge surge among the people for education. There was a huge amount of passion discovered during this period for education. And these people, this emerging group of people who started to educate themselves were then considered to be middle class people. They were literators, businessmen, okay, the teachers, the doctors, they all belong to this category, okay, and they were educated early, which actually was earlier denied to them. Now, another important factor which led to the steady growth and development of the periodicals is the rise of the clubs and coffee houses. Rise of the clubs and coffee houses. Now, generally, people visit or we visit coffee houses to have a cup of coffee, to have a cup of tea. Okay, so these coffee houses actually became the shelter of discussion. These clubs and the coffee houses became the shelter of discussion. So people came from different part of the country, people came from different part of the region, and they came, they started discussing on several topics. So the emergence of these coffee houses, the emergence of these clubs actually proved vital, to the, yes, academically, to the academically learned gentry or the learned community. Okay, so these coffee houses actually became a playground, okay, for the people showing interest towards education. So initially, few people came to discuss areas of politics, areas of society, areas of morality. Now gradually, more people came, more people flooded to the clubs and coffee houses, and this gradual and the frequent flooding to the coffee houses and the clubs ultimately gave a push that was desperately a need to the growth and development of the 18th century British periodical. Okay. Now, another important factor that you have to keep in mind, that is a political factor. So far, I have talked about two, qualitative, spiritual, fundamental factors that were very much natural, that were very much, naturally discernible in the context of the growth and development of the British periodicals. Now, I'm going to talk about the political, intervention, that proved to be a vital, initiative in the development of the periodicals in the 18th century. What is it? The Licensing Act. Licensing Act. If you want to start a business, if you want to introduce a business, you have to have a license from the government. Okay. So if you want to start any kind of business, if you want to start any kind of startup or any other commercial activity, you have to have license from the government. So it is the government who, after reviewing the motive, after reviewing the framework, it means after reviewing the policies, the rules and regulations of your organization, that the government generally offers license. Okay, offers license. Initially, I have already told you that under the monarchical system, there was a rigidity. In terms of licensing. Okay, in terms of licensing. So people anybody speaking against the government was censored rigidly, was announced invalid, was nullified immediately. So the licensing system was a tremendous challenge. It was a very violent, it was a very abusive, it was a very terrible and horrible kind of block to the very progress of periodicals. But it was abolished. It was abolished. It was ended in 1695. The Licensing Act, which did not, actually, which created a block on the way of progress, which created a block on the way of development of the periodicals or the magazines, was now abolished in 1695, and this removed the government censorship. So now the government, which so far dissuaded many publishers or the magazines, periodicals to come up with their own voices, now it started to welcome, it started to embrace the publication houses, the periodicals, and the magazines to come up with their own voices and words. Now, since more publication houses started to come up, started to emerge after the abolition of the censorship. See, censorship was started, and that is why there was a total block on the way of the publication houses. Press was, not coming out naturally. So there was not much publication of the periodicals, of the books, essays, magazines. But after the abolition of the licensing system, after the abolition of the censorship, many publication houses started to flourish. Many publication houses started to emerge. Okay, and this open up, this abolition of the licensing system ultimately resulted in the publication of more and more essays, articles, okay, pamphlets, whatever. Okay, so far, publication of articles, essays were restricted. But now, after the abolition of the licensing system in 1695, the publication became very easy. More and more books started to be published. Okay, my dear friends, please let me know whether am I properly audible to you or not. Please let me know, am I audible to you or not? Okay, thank you, Anurna. Thank you, Viti. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. So you can see the basic difference between what happened before the abolition of licensing system and what happened after the abolition of the licensing system. Before the licensing system, people did not have any easy access to the books or the articles or the essays published, because publication houses were very afraid to publish any article or writing whatsoever. But after the abolition of the licensing system, publishers or the publication houses, they felt free. So they started to publish articles, writings at random. Okay, and that is why the very spontaneous, the very frequent, and a huge amount of publication ultimately started to draw more and more audience. So more publications, more books, more articles, more essays, and more books, more essays, more articles mean more audience, means more readers. So with the abolition of the licensing system, more books, articles, writings, essays started to be published. And that is why more people, more audience, more readers started to read, started to purchase articles, writings, books, periodicals, magazines, etc., etc. So you can see this is how slowly but steadily reading public, the very wall, the extent of the reading public, the very world of reading public, started to expand. Stand the very well of the reading public started to expand, and this expansion ultimately resulted in the introduction, in the emergence of more and more periodicals. Okay, with the expansion of the reading public or the reading audience. Okay, now when more and more people started to read books, periodicals, magazines, essays, articles, writings, pamphlets, the female readers also, they could not abstain themselves from the attraction of reading. They also jumped onto reading essays, articles, pamphlets, etc., etc. And these in turn led to the emergence of female readers. These ultimately led to the emergence of female readers. So you will definitely find, I will tell you later, that how female, a magazine, the periodicals, especially devoted to female issues, started to be introduced, started to emerge in in England in the 18th century. So, so far I have discussed in brief the factors or the causes that led to the growth and development of British periodicals during the 18th century. So, before I jump on to the next topic, that is the history, the overview of the journey of the periodicals. Let me ask you to point out certain things. Please note down certain points that I have already discussed with you. Please note down the causes. Number one, increased literacy. Please note down, number one, increased literacy. Increased literacy. Okay, increased literacy. Why increased literacy? Let me recapitulate it once again. Increased literacy, why? Because earlier people were not given access to education. So you have to remember these things in a very simple manner. Try to have a simple overview, general overview. And only then you will be able to, gauge, you will be able to fathom the very contribution that the periodicals had to the development of the modern English literature. Until or unless fathom the contribution of the periodicals to the modern British literature, you won't be able to, analyze the changes that took place in British English literature from 18th century to the 20th, or to the modern and the postmodern British English literature. So it is very important to differentiate between the 18th century British English literature and the modern and postmodern modern British English literature. So please note down increased literacy. Why increased literacy? Because people in England were not given access to education, because the kings or the queens, they thought that if people become educated, they will dethrone them. Okay, they will dethrone them. So it is better to keep the people ignorant. Okay, to submerge them, to sacrifice them in the very well of darkness. But people started to educate themselves. The more education, more literacy. Next point that I will ask you to point out is rise of the middle class. Rise of the middle class. I already told you in in a very comprehensive manner the English educated middle class Bengali in our country and the educated middle class in England. Rise of the middle class. Rise of the middle class. Okay. Next, another important point that I shared with you is the rise of the coffee houses. Rise of the coffee houses. Please write down the third important point. Rise of the coffee houses. Rise of the coffee houses. So the rise of the coffee houses was an important consideration to have because the coffee houses become, a collective shelter for sharing thoughts on politics, on society, on culture, and on morality as well. Because if these coffee houses were not there, people might not be able to get together to discuss society, politics, morality, culture in England during 17th and 18th century. So rise of the in the coffee houses or the emergence of the coffee houses and clubs actually proved to be very, very vital in the rise and growth of the 18th century British periodicals. And the next important point that is politically very important is, please write down, the abolition of censorship, the abolition of state censorship. Yep, the abolition of the state censorship. CENSORSHIP, the abolition of state censorship. Okay, I've already told you what censorship is actually. Censorship means the very idea of nullifying or announcing something invalid by the state authority. Yes, this is where comes the very term license. License. Earlier, license was required. License was required to start a publication house, to start a publication company, okay, or to do any kind of publishing activity. You have to have a license. You have to have license from the government, and the natural government was not there to provide any license because they were afraid. The people, I mean the monarchs or the kings and the queens or the monarchical authority, the government was afraid that people might go against them. People might write against the government. And so they deliberately, they intellectually did not offer license. Only they would give license only to those company or those agencies who were the blind supporter, who were the blind follower of the government. Understand? So license system, these very negative thoughts, these very censorship, censorship, unfair censorship was ultimately put an end in 1695. 1695, the censorship was abolished. I will ask this question to you later. Okay. Then please write down the next point. Emergence of broad audience. Emergence of broad audience. Please write down emergence of broad audience. AUDIENCE. Emergence of broad audience. Emergence of broad audience. I told you that initially people started to get together in several coffee houses. Gradually, the number of people collecting together in such coffee houses increased. The number increased. And this increase in the number of people visiting the coffee houses also increased later on. And this ultimately increased or expanded the very area of reading audience. It expanded the world of the reading public. And that is why I have asked you to write down the point, emergence of broad audience. Another important point I did mention. What is it? Please tell me. What is another important factor that I mentioned? The final factor. Okay, please tell me. Ananda, Dipandita, Shomi, Rinki. What is the another important factor that I'm going to mention? Yes, yes, the female readers, emergence of female readers. Please write down emergence of female readers. Okay, emergence of female readers. Emergence of female readers. Emergence of female readers. Okay, so when people started to, taste the fruit of education after the abolition of, licensing system in 1695, female or the women, yes, women started to feel interested. Women started showing interest in education. And this ultimately resulted in the emergence of more and more female readers or the female audience. Okay. Now I will go to the, next phase of the session. That is, please write down the rise of the periodical press in the 18th century. The rise of the periodical press in the 18th century. Okay. Rise of the periodical press in the 18th century. So this is very important because in Albert, I think you read history of English literature from Edward Albert. Okay. Aruna, please confirm. Am I audible to you? Am I properly audible to you? I think I am. Okay. Please make me know whether am I properly audible to you or not. Okay. Thank you, Aruna. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So it is very important for us. It is very essential, actually, to know whether any publication, whether any periodical, any newspaper, any magazine was published well before 18th century or not. Was there any periodical, was there any magazine published before 18th century? We have to know this because there were certain periodicals, there were certain writings, publications that were very much available before 18th century in England. So we have to know what these periodicals were, what these writings were, what these actually publications were. In Albert, you will find references to Addison, you will find references to Steele, the Tatler, the Spectator. Well before Tatler and Spectator, we will find, Daniel Defoe, okay, and after Addison and Steele, you will find Johnson's Rambler, okay. So many magazines are there, Examiners, the Review, so many magazines are there, but well before these periodicals, well before these magazines, people in England had few, publications. What were those, publications that were very much there well before 18th century? We have to know all these things. So I will ask you to write down certain points. I will definitely ask you to write down certain points because if you don't, put these things down, you will miss a lot. So I will ask you to first note down the Gazette. The Gazette. Please write down the name of the periodical, the Gazette. 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 Actually, it was the first periodical published in Europe, and it appeared in Venice in 1536. I will definitely share with you the study material that I am using as a reference. The Gazette. Gazette was the first published periodical in Europe. Yes, in Europe, not only in England, in Europe. The Gazette, Gazette, and it was in Venice that it started to be published. Yes, its year of publication was 1536. 1536, Gazette. You have to remember this, the name and the year of its introduction. 1536 Gazette. The name of the country is Venice. So it was the first periodical to be published in Europe, not only in England, but in Europe. And it started in Venice in 1536. And it was actually mainly designed for public reading. Yes, it was not restricted to the educated. I mean, it was not restricted to the special class. Okay, the sophisticated. It was actually designed for public reading. Okay, and it was actually the issue of war. It chronicled the war between the Venetians and the Turks. Venetian and the Turks, Turks, Turks. Venetian and the Turks, the fight between the war, the battle between Turk and Venetian was the subject matter or was the area of concern of this periodical named Gazette. Then, what about England? So, the first periodical which started to be published, which was introduced in Europe, was in 1536, the Gazette. Now, what about England? What about England? You have to write down. So please write down next important point. The first English periodical, the first English periodical was the Corantus. The Corantus. Okay, the Corantus. So you can, hear the sounds of the crackers. Okay, but I was resolved to conduct this session with you. I know that we are all in festive mode, but we have to carry on our academic journey. Okay, because the examinations, the competitive examinations, or the end semester examinations are at the corner. Because after the vacation, all the students, say who are actually preparing for UG end semester examinations or the PG end semester examinations, and you all know that UGC net sets examination is going to be held in the month of December, January 25, 26. So everybody has to start vigorously after the vacation. So why not, we should start it earlier than the others. So it is very wise to start earlier. So the first English periodical that was published was the Corantos, C-O-R-A-N-T-O-S, the Corantos, C-O-R-A-N-T-O-S, the Corantos. And it started to be published in 1622. 1622, Corantos. And this periodical was issued by two important figures. I will ask you to point down: Thomas Archer and Nicholas Bourne. Thomas, Thomas, Thomas Archer, A-R-C-H-E-R, Thomas Archer, and Nicholas Bourne, B-O-U-R-N-E, Nicholas Bourne, B-O-U-R-N-E, Nicholas Bourne. Thomas Archer and Nicholas Bourne. Okay. Yes, subject matter. Yes. I told you that that the Gazette chronicled the war between Venetians and the Turks, and this English periodical, the first English periodical, the Corantos, actually chronicled the foreign wars. Yes, foreign words. Yeah. Foreign words. Okay. The next important point that I will ask you to note down is that you have heard the name of Cromwell, Oliver Cromwell. Now in 1655, now tell me, when was the licensing system abolished? When was the licensing system abolished? Please tell me. In which year was the licensing system abolished? Okay, Abhishek, good evening. Actually, I could not see the comment section. When was the licensing system abolished? Abhishek, let me tell you, at the request of few, I decided to, take a special session on 18th century British periodicals. Okay, so this is why I am here with this. Yes, 1695 licensing system was abolished. Okay, so Oliver Cromwell in 1655 he restricted the freedom of the press. Restricted the freedom of the press. Now Milton wrote a prose treatise. Milton, yeah, thank you, Priyanka. Milton wrote a prose treatise to protest the licensing system. What is the name of that prose treatise? It is very much there in the book of Albert, the History of English Literature. Primita, can you please tell me the name of the prose treatise that Milton wrote to protest the censorship, to speak for the liberty of the press? In Bengali, which is called Sangbad Patre Shadhinata. এর জন্য মিল্টন একটি prose treatise লিখেছিলেন. What is it? Most of you have heard the name of Areopagitica. Areopagitica. Have you heard the name of the book Areopagitica? Areopagitica. It was, yes, Areopagitica. It was probably published. It was probably published in the first phase of the literary career of Milton. You know that from 1640 to 50, during these years, he produced some wonderful sonnets. And well before the publication of these sonnets, he concentrated on producing pamphlets, prose treatises. And after 1660, he went on to publish the Paradise Lost. Then he wrote Paradise Regained, Samson Agonistes, the famous classics in the later half of his literary career. So Areopagitica was a prose treatise that Milton wrote to speak for the liberty of press. Liberty of press. Why? The Cano লিখলেন? Because in 1655, Cromwell restricted the freedom of press. It means you can see that government, the British government, they wanted to thwart, they wanted to, steal away the very freedom, the very liberty of press. Yes, the very liberty of press. Yes, 1659. The very liberty of press. Why? They actually feared the public uproar. They feared of being thrown away. They were afraid of being displaced. And that is why they were very much desperate to curb, to tame the, reading public or the wise public or the common people. And, licensing or the censorship was a weapon which was available to the British government to control the public mouth. Okay, so in 1655, Cromwell restricted the freedom of the press. Only during this restriction, only one government periodical was in vogue, and the name is the Public Intelligencer. I will ask you to write the name of this periodical, the Public Intelligencer. The Public Intelligencer. Please write down the name, because it was a government propaganda tool. Okay, this periodical was actually a periodical of the government, for the government. Understand? So it was not a periodical which is controlled or handled by a public agency or any individual. Okay, but it was a periodical which was in favor of the government, and that is why it was not restricted, because yes, it was speaking in favor of the government. Okay. Now, another important name, another important figure that you have to keep in mind is Henry Modiman. Henry Modiman. Muddiman. Henry Modiman. Henry Modiman. Please write down Henry Modiman. Henry Modiman. M-U-D-D-I-M-A-N. Henry Modiman. Why? Why should we? Yeah. Hi, sir. Yes. Who is it? A01. Who is it? Please put your name on the box. Good evening. Welcome. Henry Modiman. Please write down the name of the periodicals that come under his name. The Parliamentary Intelligencer. Please write down the Parliamentary Intelligencer. The Parliamentary Intelligencer. GENC here. Parliamentary Intelligencer. Next, under Henry Modiman is Mercurius Publicus. Another important one under Modiman is Mercurius Publicus. Yeah, Mercurius. M-E-R-C-U-R-I-U-S. Mercurius. Yeah, I'm Bengali. Yes. What's your name? What's your name, brother? Mercurius Publicus. Good evening. Good evening. Mercurius Publicus. Is it my brother and sister from Bengali? Mercurius Publicus. Yeah. And another, Sukomal. Okay. Sukomal, where are you from, brother? Where are you from? And another is the London Gazette. Yeah. The London Gazette. The London Gazette. G-A-Z-E-T-T-E. The London Gazette. G-A-Z-E-T-T-E. London Gazette. Mayapur. Okay. Mayapur. So what are you doing right now, Shukamal? Are you preparing for UGC NET set, or you are pursuing your post-graduation or doing anything else? London Gazette. I think you have written down all the periodicals under Modiman. So what are the periodicals that I have mentioned under Modiman? That is, yes, Parliamentary Intelligencer, Mercurius Publicus, and the London Gazette. So these three important periodicals under Modiman you have to keep in mind. Okay, and all these were very much there when Cromwell exercised press restriction on several periodicals. Understand? Yes. So these periodicals actually emerged when Cromwell was there, when Cromwell exercised his, yes, authorship, his dictatorship. Thank you. Okay. Now, so the idea has to be clear. So who restricted the freedom of press? Who limited the freedom of press? That is Cromwell in 1655. Now, after the monarchy was restored, the restoration period, the restoration period, Restoration Comedy of Manners, you have heard the name. So during the restoration in 1660, after the monarchy was restored in 1660, press freedom was re-established. So the restriction on press, which was introduced by Oliver Cromwell in 1655, was again re-established. It means, the freedom which was stolen was again re-established. And that is why, sir, I read in class 9. Okay. Sir, I read in class 9. My goodness. Okay. Actually, my dear brother, this is the class for the, students or the aspirants of UGC NET set SSC with English literature. Okay. This is not the spoken English class, but you can participate. You can join to listen to English, to listen to the lectures. But for spoken English, you have to join on, Tuesday, Thursday, and for writing skill, I have decided to take class on Friday as well. Okay. Welcome you, brother. So during the restoration, or when freedom of the press was re-established during the restoration period in 1660, England all on a sudden saw a rise in the growth of journalistic activity, or it means journalistic activity all on a sudden started to breathe fresh oxygen, fresh air, which it could not during the term of Cromwell. Understand? So advertising become a regular feature. So all on a sudden, there was a huge surge in journalistic venture, journalistic activity. Now comes the most important point. So we are getting closer to the 17th, century. Now, two important political parties, two important political parties emerged, okay, during the, late years of the 17th century and the early phase of the 18th century. Late years of the 17th and the early years of the 18th. The two political parties said that this is history. No, actually, this is not history, actually. This is English literature. Okay. So, Whig and Tory, sir, this is history. Yes, no, sir, no, brother, this is English. Okay. The early 18th century or the late 17th century saw the emergence, rise of two, political rivals, just as, two rival countries, India and Pakistan, which emerged, in the post-independent era. Similarly, two political parties, rival political parties, who were always at loggerheads, emerged in the early phase of the 18th century or the late years, of the 17th century. Okay. Thank you, brother. Sir, आप बहुत अच्छे पढ़ा रहे हो. Okay. Thank you, brother. Okay. Okay. I also teach history to my students because I teach history, political science, especially Indian constitution, Indian economics, but to the students of civil service examinations. But now I have stopped all these things and I have started to focus on English literature, English language, English communication skill, English writing skill only, because the situation, the anxiety or the restlessness that the students at present or the aspirants at present have been facing. So I have started to focus only on English. But earlier I used to teach students Indian history, world history, Indian geography, Indian economics, Indian constitution also. And I also, taught students of civil service examinations for, 5 or 6 years. But now this is a past. But if you have any interest in history, you can personally call me. Then I can definitely help you out if you find out anything to solve with me. Okay, you are always welcome. Anyway, so the thing that I was, I was going to say is that the emergence of two political parties, Tories and Whigs. Now, forget about Tories and Whigs. Just analyze, just observe what we have been witnessing in our country. There are so many political parties at present. See, Bharatiya Janata Party, Trinamool Congress, then Communist Party of India, then National Congress. So all these political parties, and there are so many political parties, and you can see that these political parties, they have been using media. They have been using several newspapers as mouthpiece. Okay, actually several newspapers, several channels, news channels are there who are actually working, who are functioning as mouthpieces for the concerned political parties. So this is not a new concept to have, my dear brothers and sisters. This is not this is not a purely aligned concept. This is quite natural. It was quite common in England also during the 18th century, because what we have been actually, sir, you live in West Bengal. Yes, I live in West Bengal. So what we have been, seeing in our country is actually is not natural. It actually is not unnatural. Is not something that is new. It's quite natural. It's it was very much there. It is now very much in vogue, and it will be stronger and stronger in near future. So this same tradition, the same tradition was noticeable in case of England during the 18th century. Why? Because the two political parties that I did mention the two political parties, Whig and Tory, they used certain periodicals. They used certain periodicals as their mouthpiece, and they hired authors. They hired authors, writers to speak for them, to write for their parties. Understand? And that is why the author, the writers, not all the authors, not all the writers, several authors, several writers like, Swift, you have heard the name of Jonathan Swift, who wrote Tale of a Tub. I did mention Tale of, while I was teaching you Victorian novel, Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, Tale of a Tub, Battle of Books. I did mention, Abhishek, you can remember, all of you can remember. So, Jonathan Swift, his association with William Temple, I did mention. Okay, the Battle of the Books, which featured the debate between the ancient and the modern authors. Sir William Temple, under whose actually care Jonathan Swift became famous. Yeah, thank you, Aruna. Jonathan Swift became famous. Actually, he took side of the ancient, and that is why Jonathan Swift also took side of the ancient. So you know the name of Jonathan Swift. So Jonathan Swift also started to write for one political party. Similarly, addition, still, they did have the political, intervention. They were definitely motivated by political intervention. Understand? Politics was very much there. So, periodicals which, so far, was used as a medium of information on war, on several socio-political issues, now came to be used as political weapon by two political parties, Tory and the Whigs. And that is why the emergence of these two political parties also led to the growth and development of periodical that is mostly political in nature. So the rivalry between the Tory and the Whig led to the coming up of the political periodicals. Understand? Okay. Now, for example, you know the name, the Tatler, the Spectator. I will, ask you to, actually, I will definitely share a material with you. I'm not taking names of these periodicals. I'm just, telling you the history, a general history. Okay. So, Tatler, which started functioning from 1709, and stopped its journey in 1711, and in the same year 1711, Spectator was started by Tatler also. And actually I forgot, still started both the periodicals. Tatler first in 1709, and it started functioning till 1711. from 1709 to 1711 was the duration of functioning of the Tatler. And in 1711, Tatler started another important periodical named The Spectator. Now, Edition was a very close friend of Still. So Edition proposed to contribute to Tatler and Spectator. Ultimately, Tatler এবং Spectator কিন্তু আমাদের Edition লিখলেন. So though the number was not very huge, but he regularly contributed to the Tatler and the Spectator as well. So after the Tatler and the Spectator, we'll find several other periodicals like Samuel Johnson's The Rambler, which was started in 1750, The Idler, 1758. Then you will definitely find another important novel, Gentleman's Magazine. So all these periodicals started to emerge during the 18th century. And you have to, what is important here is you have to have a chronological overview of the year of commencement of the journey of these periodicals. You have to remember the name and the year of introduction of these periodicals chronologically, because you all want to appear in UGC, NET, SET, SSC with English literature. You have to remember the names of these periodicals, journals, magazines periodically, chronologically. Understand? Chronologically. Okay, Tatler, Spectator, then Guardian, okay, then the Rambler, Idler. So all these periodicals have to be remembered, have to be given due attention. Okay, but now, dear friends, I will ask you to note down the names of certain periodicals so that you can have a ready material for practice at home. Please write down the names of these periodicals. Okay, the London Gazette. Please write down the name. The London Gazette. What is the year of introduction of this periodical, the London Gazette? Can anybody please tell me the London Gazette and who introduced this London Gazette? I will end the session in 5 to 10 minutes. The London Gazette, year of introduction, it is 1665. 1665. The London Gazette, England's first official newspaper. Then comes the Tatler. Please write down the Tatler, 1709 to 11. I will give you a detailed, chronology of all the periodicals. Okay, the Tatler. Okay, Henry Modiman. Yes, Ananda, thank you, Henry Modiman. Okay, the London Gazette, the Tatler, 1709 to 11. Then write down Spectator, 1711 to 13. 1711 to 13. The Spectator, 1711 to 13. Actually, I'm giving these for your, general understanding, for your recapitulation. Okay, nothing else. Otherwise, I will be there with a detailed study material on this. Okay, the Spectator, 1711 to 13. Actually, Tatler, Spectator, very much there in the history of English literature by Edward Albert. Okay, then write down, please, the Gentleman's Magazine. It's very important. Gentleman's Magazine, 1731 to 1868. The Gentleman's Magazine, 1731 to 1868. Yes, Ramita, the Guardian, 1713. I know you read Albert well. The Gentleman's Magazine, 1731 to 1868. Okay. Next comes the Female Spectator. It's a very important one. The Female Spectator. 1744 to 46. 1744 to 46. I will ask you the chronological order of these novels in the next class. Okay. The Female Spectator, 1744 to 46. 46, yes. হাইফেন দিয়ে একটু লিখে নাও এখানে, এলিজা হেউড, এলিজা হেউড, এলিজা, ELIZA, এলিজা হেউড, HAYWOOD, এলিজা হেউড. Actually, it's a periodical which was entirely devoted to the feminist issues and concerns. Yeah, female spectator, 1744 to 46. Then comes the Rambler, You know Samuel Johnson? Rambler, RAMBLER, Rambler. It's very important. It is often asked. 1750 to 1750, 1750 to 1752. 1750 থেকে 1752, Rambler. Okay. So, my dear brothers and sisters, you have to remember all these periodicals and the year of their introduction chronologically. Okay, this is the important part of it. Now, in the next class, what I have planned to do is that I will take up two important essays from one from Addison and one from Steele to make you understand how the periodicals feature writings or feature essays which actually served the function of social reform. Okay, so the periodicals and the essays published in these periodicals actually perform the role of social reformers. These essays that Addison and Steele wrote for the periodicals were a reflection, were a mirror to the society, to the British society of the 18th century. These essays will definitely give us an idea how and what was the way of living, how was the culture of of England during the 18th, and how the taste of the people of England changed during the 18th century. Okay, so all the social, political, cultural, religious issues will be addressed in the session to come, and where I will take up two essays, one from Addison and one from Steele. So for the time, it's goodbye. See you in the next class. Okay.